One day, a group of students walked in my office and told me that they wanted to hire me because they planned to protest downtown and they were going to burn their draft cards. Studying that problem for a number of years and having participated with the Committee of 1,000 in Chicago and in this planning strategy for planting crosses on the University of Wisconsin-Madison quadrangle, I took the political position that the only thing that people got with the politics of confrontation was a headache or a cracked skull. Now, many of us were really concerned because, being strict constructionalists of the Constitution, we believed that Congress should declare war if they were going to dally in Southeast Asia. Of course, Congress punted. Then they staged an incident called the Gulf of Tonkin, and Congress gave the military authority to send troops officially to Southeast Asia. So from my research, I knew that Colorado existed and became a state 100 years after the United States. A century after the Constitution was drafted and adopted by the United States Congress. Our Constitution, the one in Colorado, called for referendums, citizen initiative, and things such as that the U.S. Constitution didn't. We also had our own Bill of Rights, which was a little stronger than the Bill of Rights in the American Constitution. In any event, my position was that we became a state after the government became a nation. That nation accepted us and granted us statehood when we petitioned them for that. To get granted statehood, they had to approve our state constitution, and our state constitution specified that we could alter it at any time with a referendum. So I proposed that the students do a referendum, a constitutional amendment, making it unlawful for any Colorado citizen to be drafted into the armed services to serve in any war unless it was declared to be a war under a declaration of war by Congress. This kind of stirred up a few people and caused, I imagine, a little anxiety. But I thought it was kind of fun. We almost made the ballot. In the meantime, many other intrigues were going on. And my history client, who also happened to be Brzezinski's cousin, disappeared from the university. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody had seen him. And there was a hotly contested divorce between he and his wife. And they hadn't been married that long. He went to Prague and met this woman who was a translator at one of the hotels and whose uncle happened to be the head of the STB, which is the Czech equivalent of the GRU. They got married and she came to Boulder. They had a wedding reception in Lyons, Colorado, at a German restaurant called the Black Bear Inn. And it was revealed there that my client, Mrs. Tannenbaum, had signed her name to the immigration petition, claiming to be a government official and doing that. I don't know whether it's true or not, but Rhea's new wife got an entry visa into the United States, coming from an Iron Curtain country, particularly with her communist territory background in intelligence. It wasn't CIA type intelligence, but it was military type intelligence, like the difference between the KGB and the GRU. So when Rhea disappeared, about the same time Alexander Dubček was trying to leave Czechoslovakia, Mrs. Tannenbaum got accused of conspiring in his disappearance. There was an incident reported in the paper where the police were called, where the Czech Mrs. Rhea accused her husband of trying to kill her, and there was an escape through a second-story window, and all kinds of publicity in the paper. Mrs. Tannenbaum had rented a plane that she claimed Rhea had given her permission to do, and also cashed some of his checks, which was consistent with the interviews that I had with Mr. Rhea. In any event, she was prosecuted in Boulder and found not guilty by reason of insanity. She was also then indicted in Denver and found guilty of a crime, causing a pissing contest between two judges, one in Boulder and one in Denver. The Boulder judge and I had coffee at least once a week during that period of time, and it was kind of an interesting relationship. He had been practicing in Granby, Colorado, where Grand Lake is, and my father was water commissioner for the Colorado Big Thompson project, and this judge had been a water lawyer and known my father, so that's how it happened. Anyway, the end result is during the prosecution of Mrs. Tannenbaum, the press got busy and started digging and digging and digging and found all these little interesting things. And the story was kept in the newspaper for quite some time, actually. A local newspaper reporter named Fred Gillis interviewed me and a few other people several times. The Boulder Daily Camera interviewed lots of people and kept putting stories in. One of the stories was that the president of the university, a guy named Smiley, had been a CIA asset. And there were all kinds of stories about CIA and intelligence activities in the city of, or at the University of Colorado. For instance, Operation Blue Book about UFOs was called the Condor Report, and it was headquartered in Boulder. Nuclear things were headquartered in Boulder. Atomic bombs were manufactured just right over the county line, south of Boulder. Missile Command was north of Boulder in Cheyenne. 90 miles away was Cheyenne Mountain, where all the NORAD activity was. And at Buckley, they had all kinds of listening devices and antennae. Additionally, up until the time of Ice Station Zebra, canisters were dropped from circling satellites and picked up by a new organization that had been formed working undercover for the United States Air Force. My brother was one of the pilots in that group. They washed themselves later as an air search and rescue group and got stationed in Albuquerque at the Air Force base there. So there was a lot going on while the Vietnam War was going on. And here I am in the middle of an incident where one of my clients is accused of causing the disappearance of another one. Well, right after that happened, some people showed up with suits on, looked very impressive and official and intimidating, in fact, and told me not to discuss the whole thing with anyone unless I wanted to be disbarred or worse. So for 50 years, I've kept kind of quiet. But about a year and a half ago, a university wanted to have all my files from everything I'd done over the last 5 decades to archive and sort out. I agreed to give it to them, so I did. The next thing occurs is that, well, prior to that, my client, Mrs. Tannenbaum, was in the state hospital. There was another woman in the state hospital named Joan Garner Brown. She had executed a young Nazi in a place called Bluebell Canyon in Boulder, and got found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to the state hospital where Mrs. Tannenbaum was. They got to know each other. In any event, Mrs. Tannenbaum died. Several appearances of RIA were reported, and the autopsy claimed that she died of cyanide poisoning. However, reading the autopsy, there wasn't any burn marks on her lips, tongue, throat, esophagus, or stomach lining. And the testimony was that she ingested a machine dispensed Coke. After 20 minutes having drunk the Coke, she died. So that made everybody suspicious. And during that whole period of time, strange things were happening, as they used to say. And various authors started tracking this. And one of the ones to interview me was a reporter named David Wise from the Washington Post. There were a few other instances involving local politicians and senators and congressmen, and there were reporters about a great split between the FBI and the CIA. Later I discovered, and even got documents pertaining to that Hoover and Helms got into an argument about the Rhea Tannenbaum case, and it caused a breach of liaison between the two agencies. Hoover quit speaking to Helms as they were trying to put together the Houston Plan, consolidating all intelligence agencies into one entity. Well, this was kind of mammoth, and the Nixon administration got tarnished with several scandals, ending with a group of Nixon supporters breaking into this Democratic headquarters in Washington and getting caught burglarizing the offices at the headquarters in Watergate Hotel and office buildings in Washington. It became known as Watergate. So several persons were prosecuted for the burglary, all having ties with various intelligence agencies.